Hi, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Catherine. I am very excited to have my next guest because she is extremely busy and I've tried for a long time to get her on as a guest. So we finally have been able to make it happen. And it's Christina Barrueta. Thank you so much for joining me, Christina. It's good to see you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on your show.
Well, good, because for those who don't already know you, you are a food, beverage, and travel writer and the author of a fabulous, gorgeous new book. It's called Phoenix Cooks. And congratulations on all the success on the book, because people are talking about it left and right all over town. And of course, it's selling left and right. Have you been amazed by the response to it?
I have been, and I'm so gratified because it's really about the people that are in the pages of the book. In my introduction, I write about, why Phoenix is a food culinary destination and why people should be paying attention. And that I hope the book isn't just a recipe book or a book that you use in your kitchen, but something you use to guide you to trying new restaurants.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you didn't time this to actually come out during a pandemic, right? But the timing is actually so wonderful because so many people are at home cooking. And of course, then on the side, we're making our lists for when it is, safe to go out regularly to restaurants, that's what we're going to do. But in the meantime, it's kind of a win-win in that we can also still support those restaurants with the takeout.
Yes, and that's a great way to support them. And I also, if you notice in the book, I really took a lot of time to mention the small businesses and artisan producers and places where you can buy ingredients. So not only support the chefs, but also support the farmers and the dairy makers and, shops like Chula Seafood and Nelson Meat and Fish and Arcadia Meat Market and Shriner Sausage, all things that you could pick up, or maybe they deliver and you can cook at home from the book.
It's really wonderful. And it's such, like you said, just a wonderful guide to the food scene in Phoenix. I've been here a combined 20 years, so I've been able to see it evolve through the years and really explode. I like to think maybe in the last decade. How would you describe the evolution?
I agree. I moved here in 2008, so 12 years, but I would say in the last 10 years, I like the word you use, explode. And I think it's because we have such a special camaraderie in our community with chefs mentoring and supporting each other. And again, supporting these, the Arizona winemakers, the craft beer producers, the distillers, and all that just keeps uplifting each other. So as another chef opens and somebody supports him, he sources from this farmer. So this farmer now is doing better. People are being exposed to it. So I think that's why there's so much growth.
And I like that you mentioned the camaraderie, because we do have some of the finest chefs in the country here, yes, in our city. And with social media now, what it is, you see a lot of that sharing and giving props to each other and recommending, restaurants. A lot of chefs like to say, oh, I discovered this new restaurant, or this is one of my favorites. And so I really like that you touched on that, because I think it's really important. How would you describe the food scene just in general for people who may not be aware of just how robust it is?
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of people think of Phoenix as barren or desert. So I don't think they realize, our farmers markets are amazing. The range of produce we have 2 growing seasons. So we get fresh tomatoes in December when everybody else is, covered by snow, or it's chilly and all, the gardens aren't flourishing. But here, for example, in my backyard right now, I have tomato plants and pepper plants and, lettuces and carrots and beets. So we really have an abundance of agricultural riches, which contributes to the chefs transforming that on the plate. And I think a lot of people don't realize how rich we are in produce and our dairies and ranches and farms.
Mm-hmm. And so many James Beard Award finalists in our backyard. How did you go about selecting, and there are dozens and dozens of the finest chefs in this book, but how did you go about selecting who you would put in the book?
Well, I tried to arrange, some of the chefs that are shining stars at big resorts, chefs that are doing upscale things, little mom and pops, you know, that favorite neighborhood Thai restaurant like Lai Ban, or, you know, Brickyard Downtown, which does great global menu, and then also excellent cocktails. So I really tried to do a little bit of everything. There's Japanese influenced recipes in there. There's Peruvian, there's Mexican. And if they're not in the book and you wonder why, I probably did ask them. Chefs were working on their own books, or, you know, or just busy opening a restaurant, or didn't have the time. But I could have put 100, you know, different chefs in this book.
And we should mention that there are chefs and there are mixologists in the book as well, because we do have a great community when it comes to mixologists as well here in Phoenix. Maybe people don't realize that. So have you always been drawn to food? Have you always considered yourself a foodie?
You know, I always was interested in food. I remember my mom, she would work for people and bring home their old gourmet magazines. And I would just read them from cover to cover. When I was younger, I would watch, you know, Julia Child and the Galloping Gourmet and, you know, those old PBS shows. So I always was interested in it. I really didn't start cooking myself till probably my 20s. But my mom's a great cook. My dad worked in a kitchen for a short time. My brother is an amazing gourmet cook. He'll, you know, cook multi-course feasts for him and his wife. So I think we all, you know, have always enjoyed sitting around a table, and my parents like to dine out too. So I think I was always exposed to that.
Well, so if anybody follows you on Instagram, and they should, they will probably become familiar with the fact that you do dine out a lot these days, because you have this wonderful relationship with chefs. And of course, they probably want you to see and taste some of the, you know, dishes that are new or very favorites of theirs. So my question is, how does one become a food writer? Because you are not a food critic. You are a food writer, and there's a big difference.
Yes. Yeah. I'm all about supporting. Not that food critics don't support, but I've never felt comfortable in a position to kind of pick apart a meal. I think of it more as like, I like to put a spotlight. So you'll see my pictures on Instagram will be maybe a drink I had, or a local spirit I made a cocktail with in my backyard, or, you know, a new dish, a new restaurant opening, you know, a chef introducing his seasonal menu. So I just want people to say, wow, all this is happening in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so did you set out to become a food writer? How did that evolution happen?
Well, I was very fortunate, because when I moved here in 2008, I attended, you know, of course I looked and saw what kind of local dinners could I explore, you know, this region. And I don't know if you remember Topino, Porter's old restaurant, but he used to do these fantastic locavore dinners, and people would sit with a winemaker. That's actually where I met Arizona winemakers for the first time, and the farmers and people in the industry. And we sat with friends of my son-in-law for dinner, and they were working on a magazine called AZ Wines and Vines. I don't know if you remember that. It became Arizona Wine Lifestyle. And as we became friends, they read the things I had written on a food board in Boston, which is where I moved from. I was on a food board called Chowhound, where we live to eat, not eat to live. So they had read that, and they were looking to add in a restaurant review, and they asked me if I would be willing to write. So to be able to move here and within months write for a print magazine, I know how rare that is. So I'm very appreciative to Ronnie and Josh, who tapped me for that very first time. And then when they sold, I wanted to keep doing what I was doing. So that's when I started my website.
And your website is writeonruby.com.
Yes.
And you mentioned the food board, because you get people asking you a lot of times, you know, where does the Ruby come from?
Yes,
Are you
all
BE?
the time. Yeah.
So can you explain that a little bit?
If I had, you know, my choice to do it now, I would have just used my name. But back then when I was on the food board, that was my AOL.
So we remember that.
Yeah, you know, when they had dial-up.
Exactly.
So I just used that And then once I moved here, everybody said to keep it because people knew me as Ruby. And in fact, even now I'll go out and I'll hear somebody say, "Hey, are you Ruby?" So I answer to Ruby too, even though it's kind of a funny story. But so I've always kept it, and now I'm identified with it. So I think it's here to stay.
Well, I love the website because you write about food, you write about beverage, you write about travel. You're very well traveled, which has really influenced how you approach food, correct?
Yes, correct. Because even when we travel, we revolve it around what restaurants we're going to eat. Mm-hmm. We fit in a museum, some culture in there too, but it's really every meal is decided upon because to me, it's an education. Whether it's a specialty from that city or country or a restaurant that has won awards, I want to learn what defines that area. And I think that's what we have in Phoenix, what defines Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, something that everybody can explore and be proud of.
I approach travel the same way. I have my list of restaurants, which, if we don't hit all of them or as many of them as possible, it's not a complete trip in my eyes.
Yeah. But you also do lunch and then after lunch cocktails and then appetizers here and then dinner here. I can't do it as much as I used to because I get older and can't eat all that food. But.
Well, I know, but the wine is just as important in my book. And I know it is in yours because you write a lot about wine on your website too. A lot of people don't realize that, Arizona has a very strong and rich wine region here.
And every year it grows by leaps and bounds, as we're discovering what grows best here, what does well, what is astonishing and remarkable. We win, gold medals and international, mm-hmm. We're recognized. And we have over 100 wineries now.
It's phenomenal. Even that, I think, has really exploded just in the last 5 years, at least, yes, from the outside looking in.
The wine tourism industry, I think, especially has exploded in the last 5 years. We have 3 wine regions, 2 south of us and 1 north in the Verde Valley. And, we have some beautiful tasting rooms up there. You can just spend an afternoon and, sample the wares and see what wines you like.
Mm-hmm. Well, I should mention that Phoenix Cooks is your second book, but the first one was all about celebrating wine. And yes. So for people who have not ventured out of Phoenix to really try some of these wines in places like Cottonwood, what would you recommend would be a first stop?
Well, locally, they're not all open now because of the COVID situation, but Scottsdale has a wine trail. And I think there's 5 tasting rooms on it now. So you can actually walk and try all these wine tasting rooms. And, for example, Merkin is open. They have these big windows. So if you're concerned about safety, you can sit right by the window, get that cross breeze and that fresh air and try, a flight of wines or talk to all the knowledgeable people. And then also there are wineries that are delivering now right to your home that you could order. Maybe try for the holidays. In fact, my newest article in December's Phoenix Home and Garden is on what Arizona wines should you buy for the holidays. And I interviewed a couple sommeliers and they've recommended some of their favorites, whether it be bubbly or rosé or white. So that might be fun to pick up that issue and see, maybe look down the list and say, hey, let me try that one.
Mm-hmm. You actually made me think of something, and that is, I've heard a lot about organic wines lately, and I've picked up a couple of them, but do you see that as a trend or something that's becoming more commonplace as time goes on?
I think right now there's only 1 or 2 doing 100% organic wines, but that's a great question. It's something I haven't really delved into, but it's something now that I think I will look into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely, trying to be a little more open-minded about that. The more I research it, it's just mm-hmm. quite interesting what goes into, making wine organic. But I digressed for just a second because I want to go back to where you touched on the fact that a lot of these places are not open. And, the pandemic has had just an astronomical effect on the restaurant industry. Mm-hmm. So if you could, because I know you're talking to chefs on a regular basis, give me an idea from their perspective of what the situation is for them, because like you mentioned off camera, you know, you go into these restaurants, you see people there and you assume that they're doing well when that's not entirely the case.
No, in fact, I had a book event with Changing Hands. We had some of the chefs sit in on it, and, you know, they made the point that they're just surviving. So it isn't they're doing well and they're fine. They are just surviving. You know, there's still a lot of them depend on takeout and, you know, curbside pickup. So when you're trying to support the restaurants, even if you don't, you know, it's not safe for you to go out, buy a gift card, buy gift cards for other people, you know, sign up for their newsletter. If you're on social media, give them a shout out or share a picture, or, you know, maybe those tacos look fantastic at Crujente, you know, give them a share. And even if you can't get in there, say, wow, I can't wait to try that when things open up better back. So you don't want to forget about them as time goes on, because they're all still struggling. I mean, most of them, I've heard this time and time again, we're coming into the best year they've ever had. And then to have this literally overnight, you know, I was talking to one of the farmers, he was delivering, he dropped it to the restaurant and they were like, we can't take it. We just got shut down. So that's how instantaneous it was.
Well, it's been devastating because it's, you know, from the top to the bottom. I mean, you know, where the owners are having to let go of employees that they consider family. So it really just has touched them in so many different ways, and it does run deep. And
the expense they've done to, you know, to do these safety measures, it's a big cost for them. I know, for example, like Bitter and Twisted and Little Rituals, two of my favorite bars, they put in a whole new air purifying system, so that, you know, that it's not just the money they're losing in revenue, but they've also had to invest money that was unfortunate into their restaurants.
Well, like I said, it's important for us to, you know, do takeout, do curbside pickup, support them, write notes about which restaurants we're going to go, you know, visit as soon as everything opens up. Of course, you know, share their food, whether it's by cooking their recipes at home or on Instagram, like you mentioned. It's just really important to do that. And like you also mentioned, you know, we can buy gift cards and support them that way. So especially with the holidays coming up. So that brings me to my next question about the book. So, you know, I think this is a great idea. And I know you would agree with me for holiday gift giving. Yes. So people can find it on writeonruby.com and also anywhere you can buy books, right?
Right. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. I mentioned Changing Hands, so support our local bookstores. And Changing Hands actually has some limited edition tea towels that you can source from the book. And I will also be doing a couple giveaways with those. But yeah, and then the restaurants that have books, some have sold out. I know places like Chula have restocked several times. They receive a portion of the proceeds from each book sold at that restaurant. So that's another way you can support them.
Oh, I love that. I love that you partnered with them in that way. And if people go to your website, they can actually order the book from there and also get an autographed copy, correct?
Yes. Yep. I actually have 5 more going out today to sign. Yep. I have a web store, so you order there and there's a space for you to put who you want to write it to, or if you want me to write something specific.
I love it. Well, one last question, and it might be a difficult one. It's a little like asking a mom, you know, which is their favorite child, but do you have a favorite restaurant?
You know, that's, like you said, really difficult. I've thought of it, and it's really hard because
go ahead.
I love Kai over in Chandler.
Yes.
They're like our only 5-star 5 diamond, but just because of that, but they source from the Indian reservation, the Native American reservations. So they do really brilliant things. Chef Ryan, I think, is amazing over there. I love, you know, Glyban, Chula Seafood, Brickyard, Marcellino's. I have a lot of Italian restaurants in the Italian Cafe. They're actually doing buy 2 books, get 1 free at their restaurant. Just, you know, you'll see the book itself are many of my favorites. As I said, some are at resorts, some are, you know, down the street from you, but they're all noteworthy in their own way.
Yes. Do you have a favorite kind of food?
I don't. It depends on my mood. You know, my husband's a big steakhouse, French, Mexican. And I think because we do that more often, I'm always looking for Asian or Middle Eastern or, you know, something a little different. But, you know, whether it's modern American or, you know, tacos, you know, I like it all.
Well, the good news is you have a wide variety in your book. It's called Phoenix Cooks, Recipes from the City's Finest Chefs. I encourage everybody to pick up a copy now. If you're not going to give it as a gift, then give it to yourself as a gift so that you can enjoy this pandemic by learning how to cook some of the recipes from some of the finest in Phoenix. Thank you, Christina, so much. It's been such a pleasure talking with you.
You too. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so appreciative. And again, thank you for supporting the chefs and the pages.
You bet. It's good to see you. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching Conversations with Catherine. Please remember to hit the subscribe button, like, and comment while you're here. I'll see you next time.